All right, guys, let's go over the decimal quiz practice packet. For number 1, it says to fill in the blank grid to represent the decimal shown. Here we're working with 875 thousandths. So I'm going to fill this in right here. 0.875. All right, so this tells me that I need to fill in, first of all, 8 of the tenths. And remember, the tenths are these long rows, or columns, I should say. So that's 1/10, so I need to fill in 8 of those. So 1, 2, 3. I know this is going to be 8, so I'm just going to do this quickly. When you do this on your quiz, you're going to want to do it, so it's shaded in exactly, but I'm just doing it quickly to show you. So that's 8 tenths altogether. Now I need to fill in 7 hundredths. And the hundredths are the blocks, or the squares. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 87 hundredths so far. Now we need to add the 5 thousandths, and the thousandths are these little rows. So that would be 5,000. So that is 875 thousandths filled in altogether. So out of the 1,000 tiny bars in this square, 875 of them are filled in. All right, so here let's go ahead and turn this into fractions. So like I've already said, this is 875 thousandths, so we are going to start with 875 over 1,000. And then we are going to take that imaginary decimal point that's after the 5 and just move it back 1 to put it on top of the 100. So it's 87.5 over 100, because each one of these little squares is 100th, and there's 87 of those and a half filled in, so that makes sense. 87 and a half squares out of 100 are filled in. And then out of 10, so if this if this grid was split into tenths, there would be 8 of them filled in and 0.75 of 1. So 8.75 out of 10 are filled in. Okay, so that's number 1. And then let's go to number 2. So here we have 52 thousandths. Again, we're going to fill this in on this little block that tells us exactly what place value each number or each digit has. So to fill this in on the grid, we do not need to fill in any of the complete tenths. There are 0 tenths in this case. Now we need to do 5 hundredths. So 5 of the squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 of the little thousandths, so 1, 2. And that is what 52 thousandths looks like, because out of 1,000 little bars in this grid, only 52 of them are filled in. If you went through and counted each of these tiny little bars, there would be 52 of those out of 1,000. So that tells us that our fraction for 1,000 would be 52 out of 1,000. Now, how many hundreds are filled in? Remember, hundreds are these blocks right here, so how many of those are filled in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.2. 5.2. And then out of 10, there's not even one whole 10 filled in, so that would be 0.52. Okay, so see how you're just moving the decimal point back each one. Okay, so you could do it that way as well. All right, so let's go on to number 3. All right, which of the following statements is correct? So this is comparing. We just have to pick out the one that is that states the correct comparison. So for A, the zeros both cancel each other out. Now we're looking at the next place, which is the tenths, and 8 is greater than 7, so this is wrong. This 0.85 is larger, so this comparison sign is incorrect. All right, let's look at B. So our ones place, or our units place, is 6, so they cancel each other out. Now we're going to look at the next place value, which is tenths. 7 is bigger than 6, so this comparison sign is also incorrect. Okay, let's look at C. The zeros cancel out, they're both the same. Then we go to our next digit. They're both 8s. They cancel out as well. Our next digit is 1s. They both cancel out. And our next digit is, again, a 1, so they cancel out. Now, we have a 7 here and no digit here. Since there's no digit left, that means that we would just assume it would be a 0 on the end. Now we can tell which one is larger, and it's going to be the decimal with the 7 at the end. So this is actually correct. C is the answer here because this is the larger decimal. And you can always go on and look at D also to make sure that you're right. The 4's cancel out, and now we're looking at the 10ths place. 3 and 8 is larger than 3, so this is also incorrect. So we know that C is the correct answer. All right, number 4. Which two numbers correctly describe the shaded part of the grid? So we can just go one by one from this here. So I'm going to start with the fractions. Which of these fractions are correct? So we have 87 out of 100 right here. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tenths. So I know that's 80. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 87, but there's also a little half here. And this doesn't say 87.5, so this can't be correct. That's an X because it's not correct. That's not me checking it off. So this is incorrect. But then let's look at this fraction. Now we do have an 8, 7, and a 5. So we have 8 tenths, 5 hundredths, and then 5 thousandths here. So there actually is 875 thousandths filled in on this grid. So that one is correct. And then now let's look at the decimals. So 8.75 tells us that there should be, so one whole grid is a whole. This is telling us that there's 8 holes. There's not 8 holes. There's not even a whole grid filled in here. This is less than 1. This should be a decimal that is less than 1. If we look at 0.875, again, we have 8 in the tenths place. There's 8 tenths. 7 in the hundredths place, there's 7 hundredths, and 5 in the thousandths place, and there's 5 thousandths. So this decimal is correct, and this is incorrect, because again, this grid shows us a decimal that's less than 1. This decimal is more than 1. This is actually 8.75, so there's no way that this could be representative of that decimal. So our two answers are 0.875 or 875 thousandths and 875 over 1,000. Okay. Now number 5, draw lines to match each decimal with the values of 8 in that number. So the first thing I like to do with this kind of question is to actually underline the 8 in each decimal or each number. And then it will be easier to tell exactly what one I'm looking for. So you can do this any way you want. I like to actually start from the thousandths place and work my way back. So I'm going to start with this one. This 8 I know is in the thousandths place because it's in the 1, 2, 3, third place over. So that is 8 thousandths. So that I am going to connect right here to 8 thousandths. This one here is, I know, 8 hundredths. So this one goes directly across also. This one here, again, I'm working backwards, so I went from thousandths to hundreds. Now I'm going to go to tenths. This 8 is in the tenths place, so that is 8 tenths. And then this 8 is in the ones place. We also see it called the units place. They're both correct, but in this case, it is labeled as ones, the ones place, so I'm picking the ones place. All right, so let's go on to number 6. Which list shows the numbers correctly ordered from least to greatest? So in this case, it's just like comparing, except just with a few extra numbers. So I'm just going to start from A and go to B, C, and D. So 0.76. Next, I have 0.3. I can also already tell that 3 is less than 7. So this is not going from least to greatest. This is going from greatest to least. So this is not correct. B, here we have 0.4, 0.0. Okay, so this is big. This is a less this digit is less, so that's going in the right direction, but then our next number is 7.1. That's obviously much bigger than these two, so this is not correct. Okay, oh, you know what, actually now that I'm looking at it, 0.4 is bigger than 0.06, so that could have showed us right there that was not going to be correct. Okay, so then we go to C, 4.5, and then next we have 4.8. So 5 is less than 8, so it's going in an upward direction. That's good. Next is 9.1, and that's larger than this. And then next is 13.56, and that is larger than 9.1. So this is the smallest, and this is the largest, and it goes in upward motion like that. So this actually looks like it is the correct answer, but I'm going to check D just in case. So 1.23, 1.67, that looks good. 1.67 is bigger than 1.23. Then we have 2.15, which again is bigger than 1.67, so it's going in the correct direction. But then the last number is 0.45, and that is less than any of these numbers. So that, again, is not the correct answer. So C was right. Okay, number 7. Tell whether each statement comparing 572 thousandths and 87 hundredths is true or false. So here, the first one says that 0.572 or 572 hundredths is bigger than 87 hundredths. I'm sorry, I said 107 thousandths. 572 thousandths is bigger than 87 hundredths, and that is incorrect because if we look at the zeros cancel each other out, right? And then we look at the next digit, 5 and 8. 8 is obviously bigger, so this is false. Now this one has the comparison sign switched. So this time it says 572 hundredths is less than 87, I'm sorry, I did it again. 572 thousandths is less than 87 hundredths, and that is true. Okay. This one says 80, oh, okay, so this one says 87 hundredths is less than 572 thousandths. That again is false. And this one says that they are equal. We can see that that is obviously false. So that is, the answer is false, true, false, false. Okay, and then for number 8, we're again looking at, we're looking to find two numbers that correctly describe the shaded part of this grid. So we can see that it's 3 full tenths out of 10 tenths are shaded in. So for this decimal, we can see that this is saying 30 hundredths. And remember, the hundredths are these blocks, and there are 30 of them shaded in. So that is correct. This says that it is 3 whole grids, and that's not true. We don't have 3 whole grids here, so that's not correct. Here we have 30 out of 1,000 and 30 out of 100. Okay, so it can't be both. It's either got to be 30 of these larger blocks, which are hundredths, or 30 of those little thousandths bars. So are there 30 of the thousandths bars, or are there 30 of the hundreds blocks? And I can tell just from counting that there are 30 of the hundreds blocks, not 30 of the thousands. So it's the two correct choices would be 30 hundredths or 3 tenths and 30 out of 100. Okay. So now let's go on to number 9. Which of the following statements is correct? Okay, so here again we have comparing 3 and 45 hundredths or 4 and 579 thousandths. It says that 3.45 is larger, but we can see that that's incorrect because the very first digit, which are both the ones places, the 4 is larger, so this is incorrect. Okay, B, again, we look at our zeros, they cancel each other out. Our next digit is 3 and a 2. So 3 is obviously larger than 2, so, and this comparison sign is saying less than, so this is incorrect. Let's look at C. Our 9s cancel each other out because they are the same. The next digit is a 1, they cancel each other out, so now we're looking at a 2 and a 1. 9.12 is larger than 9.11, so this is incorrect. And then we look at D, we have 10. Well, we have a 1 in the tens place and then a 0 in the ones place. They both cancel out because they're the same. Then we move to the tens place. They're both 6s, so we can cancel them out. And our next digit is a 7 and a 2. So the 7 is obviously bigger, and our sign tells us that it's bigger, so this is the correct answer, D. Number 10, which two numbers correctly describe the shaded part of the grid? So I can automatically tell that this one's incorrect because that would tell us that there needs to be one full grid and then another one that has 55 shaded in, and so we don't have that. That's not correct. Okay, let's look at this digit. Do we have 1 tens colored in? Yes. Do we have 5 hundredths colored in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yes. Do we have 5 little thousands colored in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Yes, so that is correct. Now, do we have 155 little thousandths bars filled in, or do we have 15 hundredths bars? Remember, these are the hundredths. So let's look at the 15 hundredths. Let's count up our hundredths. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We do have 15, but we have this extra half here that is not written. So this, if it was 155 if it was 15.5 out of 100, that would be correct, but it's not. It only says 15, so that's not correct. Now remember, 155 out of 1,000 would be 155 of these little bars. Are there 155 of those little bars? That seems a little bit more reasonable. Now there's 10 in each of these blocks. So if there's 15 times 10, that's 150, and then those 5 little ones in this half right here, that makes sense. So it is 155 out of 1,000. And we can also tell just from looking at this, how would we say this number? 155 thousandths. 155 thousandths. Makes sense, right? All right, number 11. Again, we're drawing lines to match each decimal with the value of 5 in that number. So I'm going to go through and underline the 5 in each of these numbers, and I'm going to work my way backwards. So I always like to start with the thousandths. This is 5 thousandths, so I'm going to draw my line to 5 thousandths. This is 5 hundredths, so I'm going to draw my line to 5 hundredths. This is 5 tenths, and this is 5 ones. And that's what your matching should look like. Okay. So, last page is again filling in the blank grids to represent the decimals. So here we have 325 thousandths. I'm going to write this here. We want to fill in 3 whole tenths. So that's 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 2 hundredths, 1, 2, and 5 thousandths. So 5 of these little bars. So that's what it would look like when you shade it in. 325 thousandths is how we would say this decimal. So I'm going to start with it over 1,000, 325 thousandths. And then I'm going to just move my decimal place back when I go to the hundredths. So this would be 32.5, and this would be 3.25. Okay, we took notes on this in your math notebook, so if you're still a little bit shaky on this, you might want to look back at that chart we made, and I can also help you as well if you need it. Okay, so let's go on to the last one. It says, all right, so for number 16, again, we're going to fill in the blank grid to represent the decimal below. Here we have 972 hundredths, so I'm going to write it here. So in order to fill in the grid, I'm going to take it 1 by 1. So I need to fill in 9 tenths. So 9 of these tenths. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So we have 9 tenths, now 7 hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 2 thousandths. So 2 of these little bars. So that's what 972. for my fraction, I'm going to go ahead and, since when I say this decimal, it's 972 thousandths, I'm going to start by putting 972 over 1,000. And also, when you look at this grid that's filled with 1,000 empty bars, 972 of those that are filled in. So this is a fraction that shows how many are filled in. 972 tiny little bars out of 1,000 are filled in, so it makes sense that way. And for over 100, it should be 97.2, because you're just moving the decimal back. And when you're looking at these squares, which are the hundredths, 97 of those are filled in completely, and then there's 2 extra little thousandths bars, so it's 97.2. And then for 10, it would be 9.72, because these are the tens bars. There's 9 of those completely filled in, and then 0.72 of the last one is filled in. So that's why it makes sense, all right? So that is 16. I hope that this was helpful for you. If you're still not sure about something, you're still a little bit shaky, you need help with anything, please let me know, and good luck.